hi friends, and welcome to NC Family's weekly update for the week ending Friday, January 31st. As we begin, we do want to take a moment to acknowledge and pray for the families and individuals impacted by the tragedy at Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday night. Of course, our hearts go out to all of those impacted by the tragedy that took place, and we want to keep those first responders and rescue workers who are still working in the recovery efforts in our prayers too. So we just wanted to acknowledge that and just say that our hearts go out to all of those impacted by that. Well, I'm here with members of NC Family's government relations team, Sharon Sullivan, Mitch Prosser, and Jerry Royal. Mitch, last week you were doing our weekly video in the snow, and this week we're standing in front of the North Carolina Legislative Building in the bright sunshine.
It's a
bit of a change.
Welcome change.
But we are here in front of the Legislative Building because this week the North Carolina General Assembly really started the 2025 legislative session in earnest. We are here on a daily basis, members of our government relations team, talking with lawmakers about a whole host of issues, helping to educate them, to work with them, to pray with them, and to pray for them as they seek to consider laws and policies that will impact our lives in lots of different areas. So Sharon, I know that a couple of weeks ago, the General Assembly held an organizational session to kind of kickstart things, to do room assignments and swear members in and that sort of thing. But on Wednesday of this week, they really got underway. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. One of the big priorities that they are focusing on is kind of what they've been working on throughout the end of last session too, which is the hurricane recovery. And not just out in the western part of the state. They did focus on that primarily on Wednesday for 3 hours, a 3-hour meeting, trying to handle how they're going to move forward with the planning and the preparation and preparing to build their cities back up out west. Yeah. But then on Thursday, they met again, and it wasn't just about Western North Carolina. This time they also discussed what they still need to do in Eastern Carolina to help those communities that were injured down there.
Yeah, and that was years ago,
right,
that were impacted by inclement weather, hurricanes, and possibly tornadoes down there, and there's still a long road to recovery there. And so it was encouraging to see the priority and the interest and demands of our lawmakers for quick action. We know that they want to be responsible in how they're going about it, but they certainly don't want us sitting 6 years down the road with the situation in Western North Carolina that people in Eastern North Carolina are still dealing with. Jerry, any comments? I know you were.
No, well, it's encouraging. They made it a priority, but you also, in listening to almost 6 hours over 2 days, you realize it's a very complex, very difficult area. But the legislative and executive branch interacting, trying to see how can we move ahead in a better way, still with Eastern North Carolina, and especially as we're getting ready to address even more of what's going on in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's, it's encouraging, again, just to hear repeatedly our lawmakers acknowledge and recognize the ministries and the individuals who have just done incredible outreach, have given sacrificially to help serve the families, especially in Western North Carolina. And that continues, but now it's really time for the state and the federal government to step in with assistance with rebuilding. And it's great to see our lawmakers really, again, prioritize this as really the first primary issue that they're dealing with during this legislative session. Yep. Oh, Mitch, earlier this week, President Trump signed yet another executive order. He's been very, very busy in his first couple weeks back in office. This one is, quote, protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. Well, the flurry of snow fell in Raleigh last week. The flurry of executive orders continue to fall in Washington. I don't know whether I'm
see what you did there.
It's dad joke of the day. I don't know whether to say I'm encouraged or excited or a mixture of both in these executive orders. There's been a total of 4 that have addressed this. This one in particular basically implements the Help Not Harm legislation that the state of North Carolina passed last biennium in ensuring that children are protected not just from surgical but also chemical transgender procedures and the harm that has befallen so many children through the transgenderism ideology. And so it's encouraging to see President Trump acknowledge that there are two sexes, that there is male and female. It's like there was a book a long time ago that talked about this.
Yes.
We call it a biblical worldview. So it's encouraging to see that. It's encouraging to see this help not harm legislation now become executive order. And there's still a lot to be worked out on this. And we've talked about blue states and what that looks like for them. But we're excited and encouraged to see what President Trump is doing, and we look forward to many more great things from the president to come.
I think it's important to point out that with executive orders, and we're, as you said, we're still trying to gain a better understanding of the scope of the impact of it, because executive orders really address the federal government and things that fall under the purview of the federal government. So a presidential executive order does not necessarily always change the entire law of the land.
That's right.
And so that's why it's so important that our state legislature passed legislation during this last legislative session prohibiting the administration of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and gender reassignment surgeries, so-called gender reassignment surgeries, on minors. Mm-hmm. This executive order is a very important step forward in continuation of that, but we will be studying it and talking with national allied organizations to understand even better the implications of that.
Yes,
Yep. Jerry, last Friday, also in our nation's capital, was the annual March for Life. I know you weren't able to go in person, but you watched it online, and I think we're quite encouraged by a lot of what you experienced and heard.
Yeah, I was able to watch a lot of it, and it was very encouraging to see the president by way of video and the vice president in person both participated in that rally, and it just very strong pro-life, pro-family messages. And again, tying in with the executive orders, we've seen very positive movement in that area as well, protecting. I know, unfortunately, prior administration, some of the long-standing policy about prohibiting funding for abortion or encouraging abortion here in the U.S. or in other countries, things had turned in a not good direction.
Yes, sir.
The executive orders are turning things back in a pro-life direction. And as always, it's encouraging to see literally tens of thousands of people now for over 50 years come to Washington to say, we want to protect the sanctity of human life, the unborn children, their mothers, and we want the country to know that this is a priority. So it's, as I say, I think we all thought when Roe versus Wade was overturned, that battle was over for the most part. Well, sadly, we're seeing, no, that battle is very much a reality now in individual states across the country. So it's encouraging to see what's happening in Washington. We had some encouragement last year in last session in North Carolina. We're hoping for more positive news as far as our laws and how they protect the sanctity of human life.
Yes, sir.
That's great, Jerry. Thank you so much. And finally, friends, we published an article earlier this week highlighting one of the many, again, executive orders, memoranda, and other actions by the president during his first 2 weeks, and primarily his first week in office, which was just a flurry of action. One of the things we do have concerns about, and we wrote an article about it and are writing a letter to our congressional delegation about it, and this was a memorandum that the president issued to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior seeking full federal recognition for the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. Now, let me be very clear. Our issue is not in opposition to full federal recognition for the Lumbee tribe, because such recognition would bring with it hundreds of millions of dollars, literally, for things like education, healthcare, disaster relief, and other benefits to the tribe. But one thing that is inherent with full federal recognition is the right for Indian tribes to have gambling operations. We've seen that with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in the western part of the state, with the Catawba, South Carolina-based Catawba Indians that have a casino in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, and then the Lumbee tribe potentially gaining a massive casino or casinos along the I-95 corridor in eastern North Carolina. We've been working on this issue for many years, not only gambling, but the tribal gambling issue. And in 2007, there was legislation attached to, or an amendment attached to the Lumbee Recognition Act that expressly prohibited the Lumbee tribe from having gambling should they get full federal recognition. That language really became boilerplate standard language in the Lumbee Recognition Act for years, and then about 10 years, well, actually not 10 years ago, but fewer years than that, 6 to 8 years ago, was actually removed. And so it would not have prohibited the tribe. So we are seeking and requesting of our congressional delegation and the tribe to once again agree to an express prohibition on gambling should the Lumbee Recognition Act or some other act of the federal government move forward that would grant full federal recognition for the Lumbee tribe. The whole reason for this is we've been studying the harmful effects of gambling and gambling addiction for over 3 decades. And the research clearly shows terribly harmful impacts, again, of gambling and gambling addiction on families, on individuals, on communities, especially these massive casino developments that cannibalize the local economy and siphon money out of people's pockets that otherwise would be saved, invested, or used on much more worthy interests than gambling. So we will keep you updated with that. There will be a link under the video to that article if you haven't seen it, as well as other information that we have shared today. But we're grateful for you all, and I just want to express my gratitude to Sharon and Mitch and Jerry for their commitment, their passion for the work that we do down here at the General Assembly. These are your representatives here in the State House as we seek to bring biblical truth to bear as our state lawmakers are considering public policy decisions that will affect us in lots of areas of our lives, including sanctity of life, as Jerry talked about, religious liberty, parental rights, school choice, gender, biblical sexuality and gender issues, and a whole host of things. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot going on this session. We look forward to working with you and invite you to contact us whenever you have questions or if there are issues that we can assist with. But please, please, please continue to pray for our staff and pray for God's favor as we seek to again bring biblical truth to bear back in this building behind us in the state legislature, up in the Capitol, and in other areas of our state, local and federal government. Sharon, Jerry, Mitch, anything else to share?
And obviously also continuing to pray for your elected representatives and to encourage them. They face a lot of pressures on a lot of different issues, and they're like all of us. They need encouragement. So let's continue to encourage and pray for them.
Excellent. Yes, sir.
Amen. Amen. Well, friends, thank you. Appreciate your attention. Appreciate your prayers. Appreciate your support. And we will look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.